Hi, how is lockdown going for you? It's been rather a whirlwind for everyone, hasn't it, since Christmas? We're in the eye of a storm, and yet I sit every day here in my little office doing the same thing as if nothing has changed. But around me, lots has changed. We're in a lockdown, not the same as last March, but still very tight restrictions. The message is stay at home. Schools have had to shift very rapidly to online learning for many children, while still keeping open for the families of critical workers and vulnerable children. Parents are once again juggling home and school and work, all at the same time. Anxiety is high in those who are having to leave the home to go to work, getting on public transport, worrying about whether they'll be affected by this new variant of the virus that is more easily transmitted. There are some products that seem to be missing from our supermarket shelves, either in person or online or our click and collects. Nobody seems to really know why this is. Is it because of panic buying, or is it because our connections, our supply chains have been somehow affected by the incidents at the ports before Christmas and by Brexit? The health service is severely challenged. Routine operations are being cancelled. Thank goodness mine got done in November, and people are working extra shifts just to keep routine activities going in the NHS. People are tired and a bit grumpy. We know the vaccine is here and that there's a glimmer of hope on the horizon, that restrictions will eventually lift, and the horrendous numbers of deaths and hospital admissions that we see each night on the news will reduce, and once again we will emerge into some form of normal life. But we don't know when this is going to happen, and it's the not knowing that I think creates the anxiety and stress. Added to this, the weather is pretty poor. It feels to me, and I'm looking out of the window now, that we've been walking in a cloud for weeks. It's either been grey and foggy and cold, or it's just been damp and wet and dismal. At best, we feel cocooned inside, and at worst, I sometimes feel just shrouded in greyness. So, enough of my doom and gloom. I'm currently working through the book of Psalms. As part of my ordination training, I have to keep a reflective journal of my experiences over the next 6 months. Anyone who knows me knows that I love a bit of stationery, so the opportunity to buy a new notebook was not one to be missed. I settled in the end on a journaling version of the book of Psalms, and here it is, very beautiful thing indeed. The book itself has Psalms printed on the pages and a blank page next to it for writing or journaling or artwork. So early in December, I purchased this, and it arrived. I'm just looking for the earliest date. My earliest entry is the 13th of December, so it arrived before Christmas. And I began each day taking some time to read the psalm that was on the page, and to then make notes, either reflecting on my life or reflecting on the words, or thinking about what God might be saying to me through a combination of what was going on in life and the words of the psalm. I've also been trying to learn how to do hand lettering, so this was a really good opportunity for me to practice by writing out and meditating on some of the words of the psalms as I've encountered them. I have to say, I've not been very good at doing it every single day, but I have completed it at least 5 times a week since the 13th of December. As I look back on it, I can already see a pattern to the entries. I wanted to pick out a few items for you. So let's go to this one on the 20th of December. A little bit of hand lettering there, as you can see, where I've taken part of the psalm and written it out in quite a nice favourite purple pen. It's not as neat as I would like it to be, but it is, on that date, was not much more than a month after I'd had surgery on my elbow, so I was quite pleased I could actually hold a pen at that point. That day was Psalm 6, and what I picked out that day from the psalm was, "Be gracious to me, for I am languishing. My bones are troubled. My soul is also greatly troubled." And when I look at my entry about what was happening that day and how I felt about it, it was the day that Boris cancelled Christmas, or at least felt like he'd cancelled Christmas for me. I was no longer going to be able to have both children in the house together and to spend a couple of days with them actually enjoying each other's company. My entry is really quite cruel. It says, "Christmas is now cancelled, as much as church people try to say it isn't. It is." I was really quite languishing. I was sad. I was upset. I was almost overcome in my distress at not being able to spend time with my children. And my bones were troubled. I was still in pain from the operation that I had on my elbow. So the Psalms were beginning to speak to me in a way that perhaps I hadn't noticed before. So that was the first entry that I came to. Having flicked through a few more dates, I landed on the 24th of December, Christmas Eve. And I picked out on this particular day, I was in Psalm 9, and I picked out, "The Lord is a stronghold in times of trouble." And my entry then talks about the stars of hope. I don't know how many of you are aware, but over Christmas in Houlton, Steve and I distributed 200 star-shaped Christmas decorations that I painted and written the word hope on and the date 2020. Just with a little leaflet about St Gabriel's Church, and that we were all praying for them to have a joyful Christmas. And they were put out around the development, and children went and collected them. What I was reflecting on Christmas Eve when I was looking at my journal was the impact of that on the community. And photographs of these stars of hope were beginning to flood the Facebook feed. So children were finding them, taking pictures of them as they put them on their Christmas trees and posting them on the community page. And I was struck by the fact that even for those people who don't profess a personal faith, those stars of hope were becoming a stronghold in a Christmas that was different to other Christmases that they'd experienced. Moving on a little bit more in the book, it's such a privilege to be able to do this and to see how God's spoken in my life over the last month or so. 8th of January, that was actually, believe it or not, only this Monday. So it was the second Monday back of term, not quite a week into our new way of working in schools. And the words that I've picked out from Psalms 18 are, "For it is you who light my lamp. The Lord my God lightens my darkness. He is a shield for all those who take refuge in him." I think there was a general feeling around about Monday that there was criticism going on about schools and how they were responding to the situation. And there was a lot of discussion about parents being told to write to Ofsted. And what has happened instead were parents were writing to Ofsted to say how wonderful their schools and teachers were. And I felt like God was saying, just take your refuge in me, do the right things by me, and things will be well. And that's obviously what I saw in that psalm and wrote down. So finally, let's talk about today then, 14th of January. Today I landed in Psalm 23. And I think Psalm 23 is one of those psalms that we're all incredibly familiar with. The Lord is my shepherd. We've heard it, haven't we? Many, many times. We've sung it. We've probably encountered it in many situations. As I looked at the words this morning, I picked out those first couple of verses. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. The psalm goes on, and I am going to read the whole thing. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So what were my reflections today on reading that particular psalm? Well, I think my reflections are that actually God does lead us in these times of difficulty. He is our shepherd, and he shepherds us along and helps us to get to the right place, to get to green pastures. And along the way, he comforts us. This method of lamenting and then speaking out the promises of God is something that David does as he writes the Psalms. The Bible is full of lament. David's Psalms are not always pretty or refined. Quite often they're visceral. There's David really in a pickle, shouting out to God, and sometimes being quite angry at God. Sometimes, but not always, he then calls upon the promises that he's internalized, that he's learnt about God, and tries to drag those promises into the present and pair them up with his tension and his pain. I've certainly found, using the book of Psalms as a foil, this method of reflection, lament and calling on promises as a rhythm has really helped me to process this season. I'm learning to walk with God through the bad and the good and to trust in his promises for me, for my life, for the future and for the world. We know that the one we walk with, we can trust. So I recommend to you this rhythm, to spend some time every day to stop, to read some scripture. It might be Psalms, it might be something else. To reflect on the words of that scripture by meditating for a few minutes on it. I enjoy writing it out. You might enjoy reading it slowly and repetitively. And then actually handing your hopes, your fears, your anger to the Lord for him to put those together with the scripture and tell you where he would have you go that day. Calling upon the promises of the Lord in the time of fear and chaos has really been a formative experience for me, and I hope it will be for you. Hope you all go well with the Lord for the rest of the day, and I'll see you soon. Goodbye.